Wrestling fans, and welcome to IHSWCA High School Wrestling Weekly, usually hosted by the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill, but this week it's hosted by the Bat Cave, far beneath the big metropolis of Decatur, Indiana. Rex Burr along with Dane Filling, joined by special guest, the tech wizard and the man who runs IndianaMat.com, Joe Caprino. Good evening, boys.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for the food. I can tell you that Joe and I feel much safer on our feet on this broadcast platform than we did earlier this week. That crow's nest at IHSWCA.
That place was built in like 1912 or something. I don't know. I wouldn't trusted it for any money. So
Hey, we had fun during the show, though. It was a lot of fun, and we got Mike to join us. And Mike, just such an outstanding talent on the mic. He did a great job over those 2 days and killed it on all the names. And he took a little bit of flack from a couple people on his rankings, but that's what makes the rankings more fun is when you have the rankings create the underdog and the favorite in a lot of people's minds. And then when those upsets happen, then that adds to an event. If everybody just went into it as a bunch of random dudes and you didn't know anything about them, it wouldn't be as much fun.
Well, I don't think the kids want to just roll along and follow in line. I mean, their goal is to upset the rankings, and that's what they try and do.
Well, they're not supposed to.
They're supposed to all go as
you need
predicted.
to follow along in line, young man.
I know that's the trap that I've fallen into ever since we've started doing the team state seedings and rankings is you get to that day on Saturday morning and you just cross your fingers. Okay, no upsets. I don't want any upsets. Please, no upsets. I don't want to have to defend any of the decisions that I made. But I want to give a shout-out to everybody that helped me along the way, from Greg Ratliff and J.D. Mensch, Pat Culp, and then, of course, to my committee members. This year we had a couple of new additions, and they really added to the group. We brought in Frank Bumgardner this year and A.J. Bradley and tried to expand our net. And, of course, Eric Myers has been with me ever since Trent McCormick asked us to take care of this task. And then we added in Josh Gaskell here in the last week. He had spent a lot of time looking at the different classes, and he's going to be my partner on Saturday at Rochester as we call the 1A Team State. And, of course, you'll be at 2A Team State, and Joe's going to be at 4A. So we've got a great show in store for you today. In the first period, we're going to talk about the girls' regionals and the Al Smith Classic. And then at the end of the first period, we're going to talk to Coach Derek Snyder. And he's the head coach of the Brownsburg Bulldogs. They are the host of 4A, and this is kind of the theme. We're going to start with 4A. We're going to talk to a representative from the host school about parking and concessions and coolers and all of the things that you need to know if you are in attendance. And then when we get done with that, we'll get off the phone with them, and Joe's got it all worked out with the graphics. We're going to reveal the brackets one by one, matchup by matchup. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back, and we'll talk to the host at 3A, which is Coach Jim Tante from Franklin. He's going to tell us a little bit about that setup. That's where I was last year. And then we'll reveal the 3A 12-team bracket, and then we'll switch down to 2A. We've got information from Jay County, and then we'll do the 2A bracket, and we'll finish up with a conversation with Coach Clint Gard. And his Rochester Zebras are hosting myself on both Friday and Saturday with the girls semi-state and with 1A Team State. We'll finish up with the 1A bracket reveal. And then when we come back from our final commercial break, we've got 4 minutes to wrap it all up, boys.
Well, we got to be careful tonight because Joe brought a camera with us. You and I are not used to being on camera, although you're sporting Indiana Matt shirt.
I am. I had an extra. I can't reach it. I had an extra piece of swag that was handed to me in the crow's nest this week. So we want to give a shout-out to everybody at Hobart for
that's nice. It's like the Belichick hoodie.
Wasn't that nice? It's Under Armour, too.
What a deal. I got the new version of the IHSWCA High School Wrestling Weekly new one on.
Judge is going retro tonight.
He's going retro. Joe, he's got his high post shirt on.
So we have a very busy schedule for you this week. In between now and the first whistle are we beginning at 9 or are we beginning at official Jay County time 8:30 on Saturday?
Well, we've got a coaches show that runs till 9.
Yeah, so I don't know. We may have to file a petition.
Either we have to get Matt and company to alter their schedule.
The Pacers are at Milwaukee. That broadcast starts at 8 o'clock, so we'll sign off just before that. We've got Purdue basketball tomorrow, and that Big Ten game is pushing Rex and me over to YouTube for what should be a pretty entertaining duel between the Fighting Oberlins of Homestead and the Adams Central Flying Jets. That'll be live from the hangar. And then on Wednesday, pretty cool because it's a clean slate. There's no other high school athletics. It's just Belmont at South Adams girls basketball. That is going to be Mike Mackey and Lou Koning live from the Star Dome. And then on Thursday, the judge and I are going over to my old stomping grounds in Huntington for a good duel between South Adams and Huntington North. And then on Friday, we've got a good ACAC girls basketball game between Heritage and Adams Central. And if you're interested in the girls' side of things, I will be broadcasting live on YouTube the girls' semi-state. Jay County had a great showing at the regional. We'll talk about that in a little bit later in a segment. And then on Saturday, we've got Team State. We were just discussing what that's going to look like. But right now, our provisional plan is that you and AJ are going to be live on the air, and we're going to keep everything in 1A on YouTube throughout the day to try to keep people in the same place at the same time. So we'll learn a little bit more about what the schedule is, when to expect these teams to wrestle, who's going to have a bye, all of those types of things as we go throughout the show tonight.
So
you got all that straight?
I have it down because I got the list that you sent me like at 2 o'clock this afternoon. I had to get my printer fired up and print off there. But we have a couple of call-in guests, so it'll be a nice, interesting evening. But we usually are pumping the Double Eagle, so we got to make sure we talk about
and
Double
don't forget,
Eagle.
Next week, somehow we're going to catch our breath and show back up at the Double Eagle next Sunday. I might be a little bit out of energy, but sometimes cheese curds are all you need to pump that energy back up.
Well, my normal Sunday night is at the Double Eagle, so I went there last night for supper and talked to former broadcaster John Kins. He was on the corner and had a nice evening and talked a little bit of wrestling. But you talked about the girls' region a little bit. I mean, you're going to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, we'll do that after
Okay.
after this break. But we want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. We've got a bunch of people listening. We are going to go 4A down to 1A. It's a 2-hour show tonight, just to give you an idea of what we've got. Joe just rolled his eyes. He didn't know that. That's okay. Joe is very active over there in the control center. And did you notice that he positioned himself behind the camera?
That's what I said.
And
You
put
want
us
to
on there?
You want to turn this around? I was like, no, it's okay like that. But, he's used to it. Gorilla Radio, he and Mike, they're on camera. So.
Oh, but they look so good when they do it.
Yeah.
It's so enjoyable. We want to give a shout out to everybody who is listening, including Margie Tebow. She told me she was listening tonight. Ken Myers listening tonight here in Decatur, all the way from Brett Smith up in what exactly is that?
Wolcottville, Stroh.
Okay, in Stroh. We'll call it that. And we've got people listening all the way down in Evansville too. So we're going to send it back to Steve for a round of messages, and when we come back, we will discuss the girls' regional and the Al Smith Classic.
Welcome back once again to the Hager Hershey-Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly, hosted by my house, along with Dane Filling and Joe Caprino, as we make our way to first period A, as we have on the docket here girls wrestling regional results and our thoughts, and then a little bit of Belmont information on Mishawaka. Joe and I talked a little bit about Belmont. They're showing at Mishawaka, and there's a couple of guys that kind of surprised a few people, I think, from Belmont. Maybe wrestled above their caliber, or maybe they just surprised a few people. But I know that the girls regional, Jay County is where I was at, and that was the third smallest regional. I know some of them were fairly large. There were 39 girls participating in that regional. They had one mat so that they didn't have to stop and wait because it had been going too fast. So it ran very smoothly. It was done very well. I was able to get, I think I got all champions from almost every weight class up and interviewed. I saw the numbers on YouTube start to roll up later on in the day as people went back and started listening to it. And I think it was a good event, and it's something that you and I had committed to do, and that's what we did.
Yeah, and all of those interviews are up on the YouTube on WZB.com. You can check out the article that we posted earlier today. And I know Joe and I have interacted with a couple of people who expressed some disappointment in the way the regionals were set up. But it was much to my dismay, and I think Joe's too. When you expand, you have to account for, okay, in some areas of the state, there's not going to be enough girls to fill these weight classes. But if you look at what it was last year with the setup, there's just so many girls. And they were trying to do A and B brackets and cross them over. And we're doing all of this on a Friday night. What you were able to see on Saturday with one mat was organized. It was patient. Everybody got their chance to have the limelight. We were able to do interviews. It's so much better than trying to cram it into 2 weeks again.
If you're going to spread out 16 regionals to prepare for when girls are full sanction state across the state of Indiana, and they're having multiple girls in each one, with the numbers really growing, you might as well set it up that way first instead of waiting until it gets too large and then try and set it up. But if you fall into it and have all 16 set up and you're there and you're ready, you can just roll and you never have to change the series.
And Joe's a longtime forfeit tracker, and he'll tell you that there are still boys sectionals who are sending forfeits to the regional. So I think it's a little bit of short-sightedness for some people to be really critical of the girls' side of things, trying to expand and not necessarily having 4 girls in every weight to advance.
Yeah, a couple of years ago when we were when it was first starting up, and some of the weight classes wouldn't get enough girls to fill out the weight classes, I was talking to, I believe it was Jake O'Neill, and I was like, why don't you guys go to 10 or 12 weight classes? He's like, well, we want to start big, and they will fill out. And the brackets have filled out. These will start filling out. It's another 200-300 girls, I believe, wrestled this year. So you're up about 25%. That's pretty good, and it's going to keep growing. And I think it'll be fine in the end. There's going to be some growing pains, and it's going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And I'd rather, as Rex said, keep it at 16 and fill those out, and then you can expand to 32 when needed to.
Yeah, well, and what's the point of having 1,100 girls put themselves on the line, be out there for the sport, and then eliminate 75% of them on the very first day of the tournament?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got 1,100 girls. You cut out about 200 of them. 50 to 60 of them are going to get called back. And that's a really common practice in some of these other sports. A lot of people that are wrestling sometimes don't view this through the lens of some other things. But if you're in track or you're in swim, you can not qualify on the day. You can walk out of the venue and not know whether or not you're going to make it to the next level. But then you get a call back because people drop out of certain events or your time qualified you for. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think you've got 900 girls now, 1,000 girls, who have another week of practice, who are excited about competing at semi-state, and you're going to have a true ticket blood round here on Friday night, and it's going to be exciting, and I'm looking forward to it.
Why try and squeeze 1,059 girls into 4 tournaments and then just really squeeze them down? And like Gary said on our show one night, it just took so long to get done. We were done before noon, and quarter to 12. It was all done there. Now, some regionals may have lasted a little bit longer, but, they ran one mat because they didn't want girls wrestling and waiting. So you ran at one mat. There was never a time when they had to wait because somebody was wrestling too close on top of each other.
Now, later in the show, we are going to talk to Clint Gard. He is from Rochester, and they are the hosts of Friday's Semi-State, and he's going to have information on when that meet is going to start and how many mats there are going to be and those types of things. So look forward to that later on. Rex, any specific results you want to talk about? Jay County had a good showing. They had 5 champs. I know, of course, Mallory Winter won by fall. I saw that Katie Rowles, she won both of her matches by fall. Ever since the very beginning of the year, we've heard Nat talk about Lena Lingo. She only had 1 match there, but she won. Emily Maynor, I think, only has 1 loss on the year. Jay County's got 5 or 6 girls who are really going to go deep into this tournament, and I have no doubt we're going to see them down in Kokomo here in 2 weeks.
Now, there's a couple of girls that did stand out to me, and Coach Abbott from Cowan, his young wrestler, Emma Jones, still undefeated on the season. She's ranked third in the state. She breezed through that tournament, come up and very, very well spoken when she talked about why she wrestles and how she dedicates herself. And there are several of these girls come up and said, well, there are sports you play. I'm playing a sport. I wrestle all year round. And that's like, that's dedication. And some of these girls have decided that that's what they want to do. Katie Rouse used to be a cheerleader. And she said, yep, I don't cheer anymore. She said, we wrestle all year long. Mallory Winter said that she wrestled in Virginia Beach. She went out to Colorado and wrestled all over the country and ran some really good competition. And so these girls were out looking for good quality matches throughout the summer. And I know Mallory had a real good interview with me. It's there. Paisley Chambers from Westdale was very impressive. Reagan Jackson from Daleville stopped up and talked to us. Another one that stuck out to me. Interesting. Michaela Brainerd from Monroe Central. I asked her, when she started wrestling, Coach Meyer said she was at Jay County, couldn't get her to come out and wrestle. And she said, well, my parents wouldn't let me. I said, well, what made them change their mind? She goes, they did, and I'm 18 now. She said, I'm 18, and I want to wrestle, and this is my senior year, so I'm going to do it, and I really enjoy it. And it's like, well, that's dedication, that you're just going to put yourself out there and do that. And so, but I saw some pretty good wrestling. One thing that impressed me with Emma Jones and Coach Abbott talked about, she was one of the few girls you saw riding legs very effectively. I mean, she was turning girls with the legs and putting a hurt on them. And there's a lot of girls who are not used to being ridden with the legs, and she was dominating people.
Seeing a couple of comments from Coach Brett Smith from Prairie Heights. He had the unfortunate clash of boys tournament and girls tournament coaching and dad duties. He said that Goshen has run pretty well, and that they had enough time to get through the breaks, and everything went pretty smoothly. And I noticed that he made it back up for the placement round at Mishawaka. So I think across the state, it sounds like it went pretty well. And kudos to everybody in the girls wrestling arena who was able to find 16 regional hosts, make it happen. Kudos to all of the coaching staffs and athletic directors and athletic staffs that were able to put those meets together. And kudos to you, Rex, for being what I would assume is probably the only broadcaster who did a regional in the entire state. And I think that speaks a lot to your love of the sport, both not only on the boys' side, but also on the girls' side.
I kind of have my feelings a little bit hurt, Dane. I went after the tournament was over and looked on YouTube, and there were 6 views, and I realized one of them was you because you had to check and see if I was coming through. One of them was me when I was checking out, so I said I worked 3 hours for 4 people. But later on the day, I went back and checked, and there was up to like 57, 58 people. I don't know what it's at right now. I mean, we could pull up and look, but that's what those girls want to do. They want to go back and listen to their match. They want to go back and listen to those interviews. I mean, I had a lot of parents up in the stands taking pictures of their girls getting interviewed on YouTube, and it was a real good day. And they were very proud to be there.
Well, it speaks to the fact, too, that it is a regional, and everybody who was competing lived within an hour of the venue and was likely going to be there. Now, that's going to change here when it comes to Rochester, and it's on a school day, on a Friday, when half the schools are going to be in school. And it's a lot further drive for some of these places. But one last comment before we switch over to Al Smith talk. I was just really impressed with the amount of girls who came from those really small schools over in that Delta sectional. And I give big shout-outs and big kudos to all of those coaching staffs for working with those girls and getting them to this point and then having them qualify for semi-state.
My last comment is they had blue ribbons when they came up. They were not your standard blue ribbons. They're a different color of blue. They're like a pretty sea foam, almost an aquamarine blue. It's like we're not going to be blue ribbons like boys. We got our own blue ribbons. And matter of fact, it's about the color of your cup right there. I just thought that was impressive. It's like, we're going to stand out. We're going to be different.
Yeah, and we saw that last year at the state finals when they had their little dance-off during one of the breaks, right? And they all got together. You wouldn't see the boys do that. But I think there has grown a nice mix in this sport and specifically in Indiana, where there are things that the girls do the same way as the boys, and there are things that they put their own spin on it, and it's their own identity. And bringing the tournament back to Kokomo feels right, feels like the right venue, and I'm looking forward to that here in 2 weeks.
Also, the music being played before, there's a lot less Ozzy Osbourne and a lot more Katy Perry and Miley Cyrus. So
Miley Cyrus?
Miley.
Okay.
It's
See,
okay.
it shows how much I know. She used to be a little girl. Molly.
So let's switch over to the Al Smith.
That's your joke of the day, Joe.
Oh, jeez.
Joe and I were there. Joe was in charge of the seating meeting on Thursday night, and then we were able to run back and forth between the two gyms on Friday. And then Joe spent most of his time on the floor on Saturday, rubbing elbows like he likes to do. There were a few notable people. Of course, Joe was down there. I saw Andrew Howe was there. And who was the other big celeb that I saw in the wrestling world?
The General?
Who else? Oh, the General was there.
Heavy hands?
He was there. I saw him. I talked to him a little bit on day one. But, yeah, it was a good tournament, of course, and Crown Point looked awfully impressive. There were some great moments. Rex, I don't know if you've heard or if you've watched, there was a coming together. I think, in theory, it might have been the first wrestling kiss that I've ever seen because – I watch enough soccer. I know that when two soccer players argue, they kind of put their foreheads together and then their noses touch. And then if they're really still into it, all of a sudden the full face comes together. That's how close those two boys were in the face-offs. And the finals match lived up to it. It was a great match.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. Got quite a few pictures. Check on the Facebook page. I've linked to them and some good pictures of it. And it was pretty intense. And, I think even the quarterfinals Friday night were intense. I don't remember a quarterfinals that intense. A lot of great matches, back and forth, late comebacks, and you could just tell the depth of that tournament when they're fighting for that last match in the quarterfinals. Just mainly so they can guarantee a semifinal spot, but also they're done for the day. They can go cut some weight and do whatever they need to do. But there were some intense matches in the late part of that day, and it just bled right over to Saturday, and Saturday was just as crazy and intense and just a great tournament overall.
So Belmont ended up with four placers. They ended in 7th place. After day one, they were in 6th place, so they held their own there on the second day. Duke Myers goes 1 and 2 on the second day and finishes in 4th place. Kind of interesting, Rex. I think it speaks a lot to Duke's just sort of innate wrestling ability, but I don't think he scored a point in his last 4 bouts of that tournament outside of escapes, and he still managed to win 2 of those matches.
That's
not easy when you're in at that level of competition. He won 2 matches on the ultimate tiebreakers because of his ability to ride and just sort of that innate wrestling smartness.
Well, I think the rule is you just have to have one more point than your opponent when the buzzer goes off when it's over. Right?
Well, in the one match, he didn't even have one more point. He rode him out in the quarterfinal. It was Marquez Young from South Bend Riley. That was a match that Duke had already wrestled him up at Goshen. And Young had won the toss and had scored first and chose down, and Duke rode him out. He got 3 whistles, 3 restarts. I did think for a moment that the 3rd restart, Coach Calver almost didn't survive it. He was over behind the coaches, and he had this look on his face like if they blow that whistle again before – time runs out, he may not survive it. It was an entertaining match though, and it was kind of cool seeing Duke grind one out with his dad in the chair and his uncle in the chair and the whole team behind him because there weren't that many guys left, and a good showing for Duke to finish 4th in that class. Xavier Palacios finishes 5th. He's kind of fortunate to get a forfeit there in the placement round, but still, you look at who he lost to. He lost to Brenton Russell from Warren Central and Aiden Costello from Hobart. That's it in the whole tournament. That's a pretty good day for a sophomore at 175. Cole Mendez, he took care of business on day 1. He had the seed. He won the matches that he needed to. He faced 3 very good wrestlers on the second day. Didn't win any of them, but still finishes in 6th. And that's what the Braves need him to do on Saturday. They need him to be competitive in those 50-50 matches. They need him to lose by decision against the great wrestlers, and he's done that so far for them this year in that senior class.
I know that everybody knows that Duke Myers should win. Everybody knows that Gavin Davis should win. Everybody thinks that Keegan Martin should win. For Mendez to come through, I think Mendez wrestled to his ability, and he may have surprised a few people, and I think he got some looks around the state.
And Keegan Martin dug down deep. He gave up the opening takedown of Devin Kendricks, and I thought, is this how this is going to end again? Against kind of his nemesis, but he didn't. He came right back out, and he became energized. He got a couple more takedowns, and he really dominated Kendricks outside of that opening takedown. In the finals, man, that Will Clark is good. It just wasn't in the cards for Keegan, but it was a great experience for him to be in the finals, and he definitely represented Belmont well.
So with that, we've ended first period A, and we're going to come back with first period B right after these commercials from our sponsors here on WZBD. Into the Hager Hershey's High School Wrestling Weekly, hosted by Rex Brewer's Basement. But once again, we will be back at the Double Eagle next week after a very busy weekend of wrestling. But tonight, Double Eagle has closed down for their staff Christmas party, and it's always a great place to be. And we've got lots of coaches that have made it their favorite place to come hang out on Sunday nights with us, and we're glad to have those guys come back to be repeat guests.
Yeah, I got a text from Tanner Bowman. The DeKalb Barons are listening tonight to find out where they fall in the 3A Team State bracket, and I know there's a lot of coaches and wrestlers sitting around in different venues across the state listening to us. So we're going to jump right in. We are joined now by the head coach of the Brownsburg Bulldogs, Mr. Derek Snyder. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, we wanted to talk to you because you are the official host of 4A again this year, and we just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk to some of the fans who are going to be coming to your school on Saturday about parking and ticketing and concessions and all of the details that they need to know. Let's start off with how many mats are you going to run on Saturday?
We'll be running 4 mats.
Okay, and with an 8-team bracket, that's a little bit easier than the other 3 classes, obviously. What else do fans need to know?
I think the biggest thing is to enter door 15B. If you get over by door 1, you're in the right area. But if people have come to the high school before, it's a different door. We're under construction right now. It won't impact us a ton, but they're building a new massive field house and redoing our senior academy. So the entrance that people have used the last couple of years, it'll be 15B on Saturday. That's probably the biggest thing is, I think all the team states do the same times. I mean, doors open at 8 to the public. Wrestling starts at 9. This year we had some coaches request that we did the last round all together. So typically we've done the state championship a couple hours later underneath the spotlight. We're going to try it and run them all the placement rounds. Should start around 1:32 that last round. We're going to try to do all 4 of them at the same time, see if we get a bigger crowd, which could lead it to a better environment and allow some schools to get on the road sooner. And then kind of after we try it that way, we'll reevaluate on how we should handle it in the future. Those are probably the big things.
Well, we thank you for that information, and let's switch gears a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your team so far this year and the schedule that you've wrestled so far leading up to Team State on Saturday.
Yeah, we really like this group, our coaching staff. I told these guys, I talk a lot about some of my old teams, and I said, I don't want you to think I'm talking about an ex-girlfriend, but, I've had some pretty good teams here and at Mishawaka, and I told this team, I thought they're one of the most talented I've ever had, maybe the most talented, but then just their focus, man, they're so locked in, and all they want to do is train and get better and compete, and learn from losses. So it's a really fun group for us as a coaching staff, like just seeing their attitudes when they come in. And sometimes as a coach, you feel like you're herding cattle and, forcing guys to get in the room and train right. And this group it's just kind of spread. And it starts with some of our older guys that have had some success, like a Jake Hockaday kind of sets the pace in the room every day. And that makes a difference, and it spreads. We just got such a large group of guys that just want to do things the right way. As far as the schedule, I mean, I've always felt, and I've always told this team, like our schedule is not meant for you to go undefeated. If you do, that's awesome. But when Indiana opened up the rules and allowed us to go to Ironman, and then Crown Point's done a phenomenal job, I still don't think people in Indiana realize like how ridiculously hard that tournament is. I mean, it's a mini Ironman, and they keep adding teams to it. So since we've done that, we've had state champs. We haven't had anybody go undefeated, but that's kind of the purpose. And if we do have that happen someday, great. But if you look at some states that are maybe a little more successful than Indiana, a lot of their state champs aren't undefeated, because they wrestle a national schedule, and they'll have state champs that have 3, 4, 5 losses. So we've kind of modeled our schedule after that, trying to go out and find some guys that can beat us.
Well, Coach, we thank you for coming on the show tonight. And before we leave, I want to congratulate you because the Brownsburg Bulldogs, are the #1 seed for 4A on Saturday.
All right, that works for me. Now let me know the teams so we can start scouting.
Okay, will do. Thanks, Coach.
All right, thanks, man.
So with that, we got a thumbs up from Joe. We ready to go?
Yep.
Brownsburg Bulldogs are your #1 seed, and their opponent in the opening round is going to be the Fighting Irish from Cathedral. Cathedral had a pretty good showing on Friday and Saturday at the Al Smith. They're an interesting team, Joe. I don't know how much you want to comment on these as you're engineering, but Cathedral, I think, probably a better tournament team from what I've seen so far than a dual meet team. But certainly, anytime that you're talking about wrestling Cathedral at Team State, they've got a long history there.
Yeah, they do. And Brownsburg always, wrestles well. Cathedral's always one to poise for an upset. They have some good kids up and down their lineup. They didn't have Kyle Harden this past weekend. Not sure if he'll be back. If he's back, he's a hammer. They're 215. Jackson Weinger is tough. Him and Will Clark had an epic match in the semifinals this weekend. There's a couple pictures of them out there. They gave it all. They're all for us.
That was maybe the best match of the whole tournament.
Yeah, for 6 minutes they just battled. It was awesome, especially for 215-pound match that they left it on the mat. And you can never underestimate a Cathedral team because they'll be ready to wrestle and they're going to be out there hungry to get some wins and pull some upsets.
Now, your #2 seed at 4A on Saturday at Brownsburg is going to be the other Bulldogs, the Bulldogs of Crown Point. Al Smith champions, and just an absolute dominating performance. 12 placers on Saturday, and very impressive. And their opponent in the first round will be the Falcons of Perry Meridian. Perry Meridian, the #7 seed. So if the seeds hold, the finals would be Brownsburg versus Crown Point. No surprise to most who are interested in 4A that Center Grove then, that means that they are the #3 seed, and they will wrestle Warren Central in the first round. Center Grove versus Warren Central, and that leaves the last quarterfinal sort of a rematch, sort of a best-of-3 series between Avon and Mater Dei. The two teams have split between the dual and the Mater Dei Holiday Classic. I think that should be a great matchup, and what a tournament. A who's who of the best programs across the state of Indiana. In my opinion, the 8 best teams that exist in the Hoosier State, and it's going to be a lot of fun at Brownsburg.
Yes, it is. It's going to be a lot of good wrestling from the start. That Mater Dei Avon match is going to be a good one, and just going right from there, you got possible Avon versus Brownsburg backyard rivalry. So it's going to be a great day of wrestling, not only there but across the whole state.
Joe and I talked before we went on the air about having all of the teams tournaments in one location, like when we had it at Fort Wayne Coliseum, and that was the best of all worlds. And you could watch all the matches, but and logistically trying to get everybody there. I mean, there's people that don't want to travel that far. Getting that venue locked down. I mean, it'd be wonderful. I told Joe this is great for us. I mean, we drive 30 minutes, but that's not it. It's not the same for everybody else. But it was really nice that if you had an off round, you could walk down and watch, Brownsburg and Crown Point wrestle, or you could watch down. And I don't think you're going to go wrong. The 1A is just loaded. There's teams that are just going to go in there and battle. 2A is great, 3A is great, 4A is all lined up. I mean, no matter where you go, I think you're going to see great wrestling.
Yeah, in the last couple of years, I know there have been several people. Joe, I think you guys did the Brownsburg match. You guys streamed it, or you did a radio commentary a year or two ago when they did it all by itself under the spotlight.
Yes.
And I know there were a couple people who left Martinsville early 2 or 3 years ago to get up to Brownsburg to be able to catch the final. So, but I also give a shout out to Coach Snyder for listening to feedback from coaches and from teams and from fans, and accommodating them and saying, hey, we'll give this a try. We'll see whether or not it creates a better atmosphere, because in the end, you want it to feel like a state championship match. And if the crowd does stay and does get involved in it, and they are able to focus people's attention on what the score is, and sometimes it's just as simple as making sure that the score is visible throughout the gym. If you're at a tournament where they're using the old flop the numbers over, and you can't tell what the score is, only so many people in the gym can see it. I think, if they're using track wrestling scoreboards, which I assume they are, that should help. But you want to be able to highlight that, and I know that's what Coach Snyder's tried to do the last couple of years by moving the championship one after the 3rd place and the 5th place and the 7th place match. But it sounds like they've put a lot of thought into it, and it should be a big success.
That's one of the things I like about having it on track wrestling. If I'm sitting at 2A, I can pull up track wrestling, and it's like I'm sitting at all 4 wrestling tournaments. I can pop onto 2A, 1A, 3A, 4A, and I can see all the scores. I can watch live wrestling, based on what the scores and stuff are, and it's great.
Except when you're trying to click on hub and dashboard on your phone, and there's 22 mats that you're trying to navigate. That makes it really, really difficult to figure out who won the last bout.
Carry your iPad with you.
It sure is nice as a broadcaster to be able to have those names and have them be 100% accurate. 80% of the time, 90% of the time. Sometimes they change, but yeah, that is a positive that they do it very professionally, and it's not written down on paper. I remember distinctly as a little kid going to, I don't know, it must have been a conference tournament, and I remember Barry Humble writing on an overhead projector with
the old view graph.
Yeah, one of those, and he was always trying to focus it on the wall at New Haven, and yeah, those days are gone. Thankfully,
Dude, that's all we had back in the 70s. That was it.
Yeah, but you guys were wrestling on horsehair mats, and
you
had buttons and snaps.
He had a grease pencil, and he'd write on it, and he'd take his finger, and he'd just wipe it off, and he'd rewrite the score in a new one.
I do like when I look through those old pictures at Southport, 77, 78, 79, the big, giant manual scoreboards that they had with those. Those were really cool, and certainly something to be a little bit nostalgic about.
Well, we have wrapped up our first period B, and 4A Team State bracket has been revealed. Thanks for Joe for getting that put up there. And we're about to send it back to the studio for a round of commercials with Steve Rouse running the board for us as always. And we'll be back with our second period A, and we'll talk about 3A team details and have a coach, Jim Tante, on the phone with us right after this on WZBD. by the Bat Cave, somewhere in Decatur. Rex Burr along with Dane Filling and Joe Caprino. Joe running the graphics. And on the phone with us, we have the coach of the Franklin Community Grizzly Cubs. Ooh, almost got that wrong. Coach Jim Tonte. How you doing tonight, Coach?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. We're having a lot of fun with the show, and we want to thank you for coming on our show when we revealed the last teams in, and we wanted to invite you as sort of the go-to guy as the host of 3A to run through parking and concessions, ticketing and seating and all those types of things. What do you have planned? Are you going to use the field house or are you going to use the main gym on Saturday?
We're going to be in the field house. We'll go 6 mats. Coming through, I think it's door 15, the athletic side. Doors open at 8, and we will wrestle at 9 o'clock. I will tell parents, feel free to bring chairs. If they want to bring lawn chairs, that would be fine. There will be seating, rolling bleachers all the way around. But some teams, kind of want to camp out, and we allow that in the field house.
Yeah, I was there last year for the 1A side of things when 3A was in the main gym, and a lot of sections of bleachers, but sort of small sections of bleachers, and a lot of groups of fans moving from one mat to the next depending on how their team does. So definitely good information for people to have as they travel down there.
Absolutely. And Smokehouse will be doing the concessions. Old Chip Huckabee, his son Zach's a really good wrestler for Perry Meridian, and Chip's done our concessions for years. So expect some good food.
That's what we like to hear. They had some food trucks up at the Al Smith on Friday and Saturday, and I think that says a lot about a tournament organizer who's interested in making sure that people have some choices for concessions, and it certainly makes it easier on the fan to be able to watch all the action.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit. You guys were at the Holiday Classic on Thursday and Friday down at Mater Dei. How did that go for you guys, and how was the tournament overall?
Well, it's a great tournament. You get to see, some out-of-state teams with Union County and Civic Memorial. And you get to see, those Kentucky, Illinois. Plus, we don't see a lot of those teams down south during the season. And, the hopes are that we run into some of those guys at the semi-state level. And that gives us an opportunity to see those guys. Greg and the group down there in Evansville do a great job at that tournament. It's a pretty cool tournament. I've been to a lot of the holiday tournaments, and they run it in a very special way. And the hospitality room is second to none. I mean, it's tough to get my assistant Chad Woods out of there. He's usually in the hospitality room most of the day, so he just gave me a weird look, I think, over here.
Well, you're talking to a hospitality room connoisseur here with Rex as well.
There you go.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, the bratwurst, man, they're good.
We even found a way to sneak in the back door at Gamebridge Fieldhouse last year into the one that didn't really ever exist, but somehow we found it.
Yeah, I was in there too, unfortunately.
Well, Coach, any other notes that you want to give us about hosting on Saturday? I know you're excited about the expansion to 12 teams, and kudos to you for speaking up and making sure that everybody understood that you were willing to expand into 6 mats and host that tournament. And I think it's just going to add to and make it an even greater event.
Yeah, when we went to our athletic director, he was behind it 100% from Jump Street. It's, as I said earlier, and Dane, you said that, you thought maybe we were a year away. And so I'm really pleased with these guys because, we were probably a year away, and they stepped up to get it done. And as soon as our AD, heard that there's a possibility of that and expanding to 12, which, man, there's 12 plus good teams in 3A right now. He was all for it, and our parent group, everybody was behind it. So I hope we do a great job for the state for 3A, and I assume we will. Franklin's been known for years, running good tournaments. So we're looking forward to it.
Coach, talk a little bit just real quickly before we let you go about your girls and how they did at regional on Saturday.
Well, we 11 girls made it through. Our girls were, in fact, I think the brackets are coming out right now. We've been looking back and forth at, waiting on this bracket to come out, waiting on the girls' brackets to come out. So we are really excited about our girls heading into the semi-state on Friday. We had 5 state qualifiers last year and 2 place winners, and the 2 place winners are back.
And where will you be on Friday? Where's your semi-state at?
We don't have to travel very far. We're going to be at Mooresville, so just down the road. We don't have to make that big long haul, which is kind of good for our girls and our team. I think it gives us a little bit of a plus, not have to go very far really.
And how did you guys run things for your regional? Did you have 1 mat, 2 mat, 3 mats?
We ran 2 mats, and we honestly we were done around 1:30. It ran really smooth. Of course, Jen Ratliff and Kyle Floyd did a good job of keeping things moving through the track side of, and the competition was really good. Numbers are growing. Obviously, we ran that regional last year with 4 mats, but spreading out this tournament a little bit, the numbers were down. But we're up, I think, and I think Joe mentioned that at the beginning. We're up 200 plus numbers on the girls this year.
Yeah, it's been I think it's been a positive, the addition of the extra week, and I think by the time you get to next year and the year after, you're going to be looking at a big chunk of girls getting eliminated in that regional round because the numbers are going to be there as the sport continues to expand.
Good job of keeping. Yeah, and I agree with you guys that not getting rid of everybody right off the bat, bringing in some 5th placers to fill brackets. I think all that is positive for the girls.
Well, we appreciate you coming on the show again tonight and being a good friend of everything that we do at WZBD. A little bit disappointed that we won't get to see you this weekend because you don't have 1A or 2A, but I'm sure we'll meet back up with you down in Evansville in February.
Hopefully so. And appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Okay, so when we come back for the next segment, we are going to have a little bit more discussion on how we got to where we are with 3A, and then we're going to start rolling out the bracket, the first of our 12-team brackets. A little bit more interesting on the 12-team side rather than the old 8-team side. And I know Joe can probably speak to this. There wasn't a whole lot of debate as to who the top 3 teams were in 4A. The big 3 right now are dominating the sport, but the rest of the classes
Welcome back once again to the Hager Hershey-Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly. Not at the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill. As
The
we
Rex
usually-
Cave.
The Rex Cave.
The Rex Cave.
Well,
That's what the judge wants you to call it.
my wife told me it's the Brewer Cave.
Okay, close enough.
She lives here too.
She lives here too.
She lives here too.
So before we reveal the bracket, I wanted to just quickly go back and recap how we got to where we are now, which is an expansion from 8 teams to 12 teams here in 3A. And a reminder that the original set of procedures had us qualifying 6 schools in the state tournament last year in February, and then the last 2 spots being voted in December. Automatic qualifiers were defending champions Mishawaka, a half point ahead of Terre Haute South, and behind them were Roncalli, DeKalb, Fort Wayne Snyder, and Columbus East. Okay? Then, of course, we had some transfers away from Fort Wayne Snyder. We had some really good early season results from some teams like Floyd Central and Greenfield Central. We had the transfer to New Haven of Giuliano Campo, along with her sister, who was an 8th grader last year. And then we also had some really weird results that almost the formula couldn't account for. And I know Coach Tante said that they were almost a year away earlier in the season. And the reason I said that was because their qualifying score was so low because they didn't have a semi-state qualifier last year. That's how tough that regional is. And it's awfully tough in this scoring system, Joe, the way it's set up, to be able to advance. And the same thing happened with South Adams last year. They had one wrestler miss weight, another wrestler not wrestle, and they didn't wrestle particularly well at the sectional, and it sort of, hamstrung their attempts to qualify automatically. And I think that leads us into a discussion, and maybe this is for later on in the show, is what is the future, do you see, of the automatic qualification system in the state series the year before? And are we moving anywhere closer to a system where in December we just vote everybody in?
I don't think I can't see us voting everybody in. I think where we're at right now with what should be 8 teams being voted in, that means 12 to 15 maybe teams are kind of keeping that extra 2 points open, keeping that date open. You can't expect 50-plus teams to roll the dice like that, and that's the biggest thing I see as a coach, as someone that's been juggling that kind of stuff. It's not easy to hold that open, and we saw that kind of with Garrett this year, that they were in on the vote, and they used those points early. They didn't know what type of team they were going to have. They couldn't, the way their schedules shaped up, they really couldn't just hold that open in hopes that they're going to get voted in, and they end up being pretty good, like as they usually are. But it's one of those things that you don't want to take that gamble and have nothing and leave 2 points on the table as a coach, keep your wrestlers. You want to see them get good competition. They end up going down to Zionsville, saw some really good competition, and it is what it is. But I could see maybe expanding 1, but I think right now 2 per class is the right thing to do for setting your schedule ahead of time.
And that's a reason that I asked the question, because a lot of people I don't think realize how difficult schedule building is when it comes to high school wrestling. And a lot of people that are quote unquote fans of the sport or followers of the sport don't even realize the point system exists. We have some conversations, some pretty technical conversations on this show and on Guerrilla Radio and off to the side about, the overlap between girls wrestling and boys wrestling and girls wrestling varsity and both. There's a lot of rules that you have to abide by, or else you find your name in the IHSWCA minutes.
Yes. So constructing your schedule is very difficult. You don't want to start. Sometimes you don't want to start too early. You don't want to start too late. You want to make sure you get the right level of competition for your kids, and it's quite a juggling act. And when you feel as a coach, you get your schedule locked in of the days and stuff and the right events. It's hard, you don't want to stray from that, because it's always you get your training schedules and everything honed into how your tougher tournaments during the holidays and such. And so I think it's just one of those things that people don't understand, that the 8 teams, 12 this year, that had to change their schedules like that. It's not easy, and you can't expect to do it with 50, 60 teams that kind of hold out hope that they're going to get invited, or we're going to have some teams decline.
And if you look at the qualifying scores, 3 teams that are in 15th place, 16th place, and 26th place in qualifying in 3A are competing in our 12-team tournament. So it tells you just sort of how competitive that is and how difficult it is to get in. But I think there also has to be some level of exclusivity, and it's got to be hard to get into. Otherwise, it doesn't mean as much.
Correct. Yeah. So there's a line there. It just depends on where it is every year. And I think this year, one of the things, talking to teams, more than anything, you'd rather add a team or two in the team is not what this event's for. You want to get all the best teams in there and let them duke it out, and they can decide who's the best.
Now, when you're talking about girls teams and scheduling, knock wood, if Mr. Falcons, the commissioner, comes through on his intent and girls are sanctioned next year, coaches don't have to worry about, I got to save points back. I know I talked to Jimmy Lynn, and he wanted Giuliano and Isabella to wrestle in as many tournament matches as he could, because they're valuable members of his team and they're big point scorers for him. Now, next year it goes to that, and they're going to wrestle girls. I mean, you still have to look at their points they're gaining, but right now this year the whole tournament series is only worth 2 points. But he had to hold them out of matches beginning of the season, and when it got a certain point, and then they could wrestle as many as they wanted to both. Yeah,
lots of discussion about how the qualifications are going to work, but as has been the case for the last 10, 11, 12 years since we started this thing. You listen to feedback. You try to make the changes best that you can. You see how it works out, and you try to adjust it the next year. And I think the Coaches Association has definitely done that. Okay, Joe, are you ready to go with 3A?
Yep.
We are excited to announce that it is the Terre Haute South Braves who are the number 1 overall seed in 3A, and they had a great season. They are undefeated so far. I'm running through their stuff. Most impressive for me is their showing at the Columbus East Invitational, where they finished in first place, and they also had what looked to be a pretty exciting Mooresville Classic as they finished dead even with Delta and the Eagles and tied for first there. So the Terre Haute South Braves, undefeated on the year. They are your number 1 seed in 3A. And we're going to reveal the top 4 seeds, so the bye teams here. If Joe can get all of his
They should be up there now.
all of his cloaks, and well, Rex is on his he's still using floppy disks in that thing. So
No, this is the newer one.
we're just giving you a hard time, Rex. Number 2 seed going to be Columbus East. Columbus East Olympians. They're going to be the number 2 seed in 3A. They won't have far to travel over to Franklin. The number 3 seed also from the South, and that's going to be Floyd Central. Floyd Central, the number 3 seed. And the last team to get a bye are going to be the hosts. The Franklin Grizzly Cubs, they are your number 4 seed. Looking good?
Yep.
Seeded team against one unseeded team. The bottom 4 teams are drawn randomly into the team seeded 5th through 8th. And, of course, the winner of the first match that we're going to announce is going to take on number 1 Terre Haute South, and that will be the Roncalli Royals and the Hobart Brickies. They're going to be the first round matchup with the winner facing number 1 Terre Haute South. That's a compelling head-to-head and an interesting one to boot. The next matchup is going to be the number 7 seed. The winner of this match will take on Columbus East in the quarterfinals. Number 7 seed going to be Greenfield Central, and they are going to take on the Snyder Panthers. The General giving us lots of good talking points on Indiana Matt. We love it. We love all of our personalities on Indiana Matt that add context to all of these matches. That should be a Snyder with the winner taking on Columbus East. Next matchup, the winner of this match will take on Floyd Central in the quarterfinals. The number 6 seed is going to be New Pal. New Pal, the number 6 seed, the Dragons, and they're going to take on the Fighting Reasons of East Noble. We talked to Coach Reason as one of the 3A, and I loved hearing his passion for his team and his program. He's hosting a tournament. He's got girls going to girls semi-state. His boys are going to be going all the way to Franklin. It's going to be a wild weekend. And on top of it all, his Newcastle United, also my favorite team, also going to be taking on their bitter rivals, Sunderland, at the same time. You might even see Coach Reason with his phone out, watching a little bit of FA Cup action there. The final matchup, that leaves the Mishawaka Cavemen. They're going to be the number 5 seed. They are going to wrestle DeKalb in the opening round, with the winner taking on Franklin. It's a cool venue down there. I know most people that are involved in wrestling have been down there because Franklin has hosted. It works perfectly with 6 mats. It's the exact same setup that they had at 1A last year. And I would encourage you to bring a lawn chair if you're not one of those who likes to stand for 6 or 7 hours at a time. But should be a great tournament. And 3A has proven since its inception, when they split 3A into 4A and 3A, it has proven to be the most unpredictable of the classes, and certainly going to be an interesting one. But when it comes down to it, I think we as a committee put a lot of weight into Terre Haute South's sort of win there against Columbus East in that Columbus East invite. Columbus East looked very impressive at the Al Smith. They had head-to-head wins over Franklin, who got the 4 seed, Greenfield Central, who got the 7 seed. Floyd Central was the top 3A team at the Holiday Classic. They had a win over Greenfield Central. Franklin beat Mishawaka. the nice thing about this field, Joe, is there were a lot of head-to-heads.
A lot of good matchups. I'm interested in seeing Floyd Central and New Pal. There's going to be some matchups there. Greenfield Central, Columbus East, Mishawaka, and Franklin. They wrestled at the Trikoff with Franklin, taking a close win there. So they're going to, the Cavemen are going to be ready. They got to get past DeKalb, though, in the fighting Bowmans. So, and Hobart had a real good Al Smith.
They did.
Knocked off a couple number 1 ranked guys. So they're rolling.
The football, trying to put their lineup together and getting everybody there. We saw some good things. They had 3 or 4 kids qualify for the second day at Snyder. And Rex, I have to mention it, one of AJ's favorite, Ethan Dotson, the heavyweight for Snyder, and one of the general's favorites too. He is a man. Let me tell you what. He wrestled Grady Baker over there in the big boy gym about 3rd round. And when it got over, I was just glad that Grady survived the match. He just kind of picked him up and just kind of placed him on his back over there. He's, I think AJ said he's going, where is he going? He's going to one of the academies.
I believe it's Air Force.
Okay, and he's going to be playing football. I know there's a couple threads on Indiana Matt where the generals talked about his backgrounds, and Coach Tunn doing a nice job there. And we heard it all season long, all the way back to the preseason. DeKalb and Snyder, a lot of people had comments about them and where they belonged in 3A. But those 2 coaches were very adamant that they belonged, that they wanted to be involved. They wanted that invitation. They wanted to build their season around it. And I'm excited to see what they can accomplish.
They wrestled Belmont, did Snyder pretty close in that match. They didn't win as many matches as people thought they should, but there was a lot of close matches in those wins that Belmont had over them.
And, of course, I look back to my preseason rankings. I think I had Roncalli preseason number 1 in 3A. And now they've dropped all the way down to number 8. And I think there's a lot of coaches who they see where the seeds are, and they say, oh, well, we're the 7 or we're the 6. But then they look at the number 1 and the number 2, and they disagree with them. And they see the number 3 or the number 4 seed as the best team. And then all of a sudden they're thankful, like, oh, give me that team. I'll happily wrestle them. I want to be on the opposite. And a lot of it comes down to matchups. We'll talk about matchups more in the 1A side of things because that's where it becomes more exacerbated. But, it's a bracket now, and all you got to do is wrestle the team in front of you. You don't have to worry about 10 other teams that are on the other side of the bracket, and then you work your way from there. And, there's definitely a handful of teams who can win here at 3A.
Definitely. It's going to be fun. It's going to be some great wrestling, and kind of wish I could be in 2 or 3 places at the same time there.
Well, that wraps up second period B. Let's send it back to the studio to Steve Rouse running the board for a round of commercials, and back with third period A, and we'll talk about 2A and their draw right after this. Welcome back once again to Hager Hershey's High School Wrestling Weekly. We have made our way to the 2A team bracket reveal, and there's a lot of local teams very interested in how this comes out. One of the coaches has been texting me, Coach Shepard from Western. He told me, Dane, he said, tell Dane not even to seed me. He said, every year he seeds me. He said, it doesn't work out, but just let me come in and
well,
ruin
if you remember a couple of years ago when Belmont won down at Martinsville, we walked away from that tournament saying Western was the best team that we saw.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that speaks to his program and what they've been able to accomplish. And, of course, last year was a wild one. And it's kind of weird for me. not being there and seeing it, I've embraced my role as the bottom of the pecking order on the WZBD Wrestling broadcasters list. And that's no disrespect to Adams Central and South Adams. I loved doing it last year, and I'm really looking forward to doing it again. But I've watched Belmont at Team State for 30 years, and it was really weird to be gone last year and not to see it. But I'll be paying attention, and, of course, the nice thing now for us is with the website, we're able to listen back to those broadcasts, and I'll certainly be listening to you guys and seeing how it goes. And it's going to be a fun one. Now, I've got information here from Jay County officials. The nice thing is they're hosting 2A just like they did last year, so there's not as many changes. A lot of the teams are the same. So I've got this information from Short J, and he says that parking is going to be on the north lot for spectators. They can enter in door 9. Buses are going to park in the east slot outside of doors 1 and 2. The spectator fee, that's not something that was mentioned for 4A and 3A, but spectator fee is $15. And at Jay County, that is going to be cash only. So important to note that. $15 cash only. No ATM available outside of, I don't know if the giant Patriot dispenses money. It's like a slot machine or something like that. That's not how that works. $15. Weigh-ins are going to be at 7:30 for all of you coaches who are listening. Doors are going to open at 8 o'clock, and we will not begin at Jay County Standard Time. Instead, we're going to start at the prescribed 9 a.m. start time.
Makes it better for me.
If you are a fan of Belmont, make sure to tune in as soon as the high school basketball coaches show is over. I'm sure that Rex and AJ will jump in on coverage. But as we've thought for most of the season, Belmont definitely looking likely to garner one of those top 4 seeds. And with that comes a bye in the first round. So you guys won't have to be right on the air right at 9. You guys can mingle, get your donuts, check out the hospitality room, figure out who's swimming in the swim meet that's undoubtedly happening at Jay County as well. And you'll be able to get started a little bit later. No outside coolers are going to be permitted at Jay County on Saturday, so please keep that in your mind. The main gym, all spectators are going to remain in the upstairs bleachers. There will be no spectators down on the floor. The floor seating is for wrestlers and coaches only. They're going to wrestle round 1 in the main gym. They're going to use 4 mats at Jay County, and that'll be all of the first-round matchups that we're going to describe here in a little bit. 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th seeds against the unseeded teams. In round 2, the 4 quarterfinal matches in the winner's bracket, those will be in the main gym, while the consolation rounds for the teams who lose in that first round that are fighting for 9th, those will be held out in the cafeteria. Round 3, the top 8 will be in the main gym, consolation in the commons. And in round 4, of course, they're going to wrestle the top 8. I believe 9th through 12th then don't wrestle in what is technically round 4 because they've already determined their places, and they'll roll those mats up and move on.
So if Coach Eric Myers is listening, Coach, please put my table and 2 chairs out so we can lean them up against the rail. That way we're not chasing people away from the rail. If you're going to put all the spectators in the upper deck, everybody's going to stand in front of that corner in front of us, and we might as well just create our new camping space right down there on a rail and put a table there and block them out because, you know, we're up there trying to broadcast, get out of the way, we can't see. But
it does happen very, very often there, so that's definitely a problem. And one of the unique things about each venue when you're a broadcaster is trying to figure out where the spot is. I know I was talking to Coach Gard about Rochester because I don't think I've ever been in that gym, and he said, "Oh, we've got a perfect spot to put you up and where you're going to be for 2 nights." Hopefully, I'll probably just leave the equipment set up overnight since we'll only get like 6-hour break between them.
You know, we almost had to go takedowns with somebody at the girls' state finals one year, and at Kokomo they had a great place for us lined up, and we're not going to fight for space, and I know that they'll take care of us very well.
Pat already assured us that is going to be the case. So when it comes to 2A, and we're going to reveal the bracket here after this next segment, it's kind of interesting. The head-to-heads really showed up at the top of the bracket, and it was sort of similar to 3A, but I think a lot of the discussion was down at the bottom and who to leave in sort of those last 6, 7, 8, 9 type spots and what those first-round matches are going to look like. I think that the most competitive 5 through 12 spot of the 3 classes that have 12 schools involved, Rex, I think it's going to be 2A. I think there's some teams down there that are unseeded that are going to feel a little bit wronged by the seeding, and they're going to look at their first-round opponent and say, we're better than them, and we're going to prove it on Saturday.
So we got a couple minutes yet here before you need to take that break. But like I said, early in the season, there was a lot of head-to-heads when Belmont defeated Delta in a close match, and then they went and wrestled Jay County and Western, and I mean they just kind of tore each other up. And that those top 4, I mean everybody knew pretty much who they thought the top 4 should be, but what order they're going to be in. They kind of traded some places there, and there was a lot of good wrestling there.
Well, and this goes back to Joe's point on Thursday that he used so often in the seating meeting. Listen, I'm not saying I know who's going to finish 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm telling you this is how they should be seated.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people forget that you have to distinguish between the two. We're not necessarily saying that we know this is going to finish this way 1, 2, 3, 4. The matchups are different, but when you have head-to-heads amongst sort of the undoubted top 4, it's not that hard to do the math and say this team has to be ahead of this team and this team has to be ahead of this team. That's kind of the way these things work.
Now,
So-
did you think that the top, from 5 on down fell into place pretty well, or was there some?
Well, there's
tough
a couple of
choices?
teams. Oak Hill's a team that I was really high on all season long. The way they wrestled against Western in that big individual tourney early in December really impressed me. But Oak Hill doesn't have a whole lot of commons with a lot of these teams that we're looking at, and so they're kind of a question mark. The other team that I was just really puzzled with was Heritage Hills. And not necessarily any of Heritage Hills' fault, but Mount Vernon didn't get in, and that was a team that they had some head-to-heads with. Southridge didn't get in. That was another team that they had some head-to-heads with. And when it came down to it, Heritage Hills really didn't have any head-to-heads or commons against any other team in the field. And so what we did, and we did this a lot on the committee, is we take a look at the spreadsheet that lists who was varsity last year, who made it to regional, who made it to semi-state, who made it to state. We fill in the roster for this year. We put the records, the best that we have, and this speaks a little bit, and we haven't talked about this yet, Joe, but there'll probably be, I know there will be, complaints tonight about how certain teams are seated, and I'm going to look at them, and I'm going to listen to their comment, and I'm going to think, now why did we not do it the way this person said? And then I'm going to go on to Indiana Mat, and I'm going to notice that 7 of their duels don't have any results. Or the individual tournament that they were in 3 weeks ago isn't on Indiana Mat, or it wasn't on track and nobody sent those results. That makes things really, really difficult to figure out. There are situations, and I'm using Heritage Hills as an example. I think they had all of their results in. But if we're looking at a team like Heritage Hills and we don't know much about them, we will go through and we will tally every match that they've wrestled and put Joe Schmo was 27-1. Well, that means something, because if I'm trying to match him up against Oak Hill, and I see that Oak Hill has a kid who's 5-22 at that same weight, I chalk that one up for Heritage Hills. But if that information isn't available, sometimes it makes it really difficult to seed teams. And you saw that on Thursday when teams didn't enter their information into track wrestling.
Yeah. That's Heritage Hills also they went pretty deep in the football state finals. I'm pretty sure too. So that adds to their schedule and what kind of I'm sure their lineup has changed quite a bit over the first couple weeks, trying to get guys into shape and everything. So yeah, it's about getting those results in, putting them in there, and then obviously their common opponents can help out tremendously. I know there's some kids at the Al Smith that would have been seeded if another wrestler was in the field and he wasn't, and that kind of dropped a kid from being a 9 or 10 seed to being unseeded. Of course, that kid placed, so that makes me feel even better. So, but it's one of those things that, those common opponents are huge, and being able to see those teams like that, I know like in 3A, a lot of those teams see each other, which makes it a ton easier. But, I mean, especially Heritage Hills, they're from the deep south, so it's going to be harder for them to get up and see, the common opponents of the other 2As, which are more northern. So, I mean, they have a good team, and, I'm excited to see them because they're real tough up top.
So as we wrap up this section, I do like to say that Oak Hill, if they wouldn't answer that phone call and call back, they wouldn't have got that call-in bid. We got voicemail. We almost went to the next group, so Oak Hill almost didn't make it in. But Andrew King did call us back, so we're good to that. With that, we're going to send it back to the studio for a round of commercials, back with the reveal for 2A right after this on WZBD. Welcome back once again to Hager Hershey-Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly. Rex Burr along with Dane Filling and Joe Caprino, and we made it to the section where we're going to reveal the 2A team bracket here on High School Wrestling Weekly.
Yeah, and we're going to go ahead here with the top 4 seeds in 2A, and as we alluded to earlier in the show, it sorted itself out, and this is one thing that we've talked about as the committee is trying to do too much work too early sometimes creates unnecessary work. And in this class, it worked itself out. It's pretty simple, people. Belmont beat Delta, Delta beat Jay County, and Jay County beat Western. And I think if you talk to most people who are in the know when it comes to 2A, those are the top 4 teams. Those are the teams that we expected to be in the top 4 at the beginning of the year. And they're going to be your top 4 seeds. Belmont and Western, they have some history the last couple of years. Delta and Jay County have some history the last couple of years. So some very familiar opponents and some coaches who are sitting back thinking, yeah, I know everything there is about them. Belmont and Western just wrestled against each other at the Al Smith. And, of course, Delta and Jay County in the same regional and have already wrestled head-to-head this year. Right off the bat, if I look at, what I'm thinking about with those semifinals that the seeds hold, Rex, it's Mitchell Betts and Gavin Davis at 157 pounds. We didn't see Gavin this weekend at the Al Smith, and I am interested to see what he can do against someone that I think he kind of views as a little bit of his nemesis. But 157 was absolutely stacked at the Al Smith, and if they wrestled it over again next weekend, it might come out in 6 different spots.
Yeah, that was a real tough weight class. I did see Gavin Davis there. He just was not in a wrestling singlet.
Yes.
So
he was being a very good sideline coach and teammate, and I expect to see Gavin on the mat on Saturday.
Mitchell Betts was ranked number 1 in the state and was defeated at the
He
Al
was.
Smith in the semis.
You know that individual rankings guy. You can never,
Mike.
You can never trust him. So let's go ahead and reveal to you the first round matchups. Belmont, Delta, Jay County, and Western will sit out the opening 9 o'clock round. And we're going to start with the pairing that's going to feed into Belmont in the quarterfinals. The number 8 seed is Heritage Hills, a team that we just discussed. And Heritage Hills will take on Mechaniqua. Heritage Hills, I was interested in them. I guess not interested in them. I know them because that's who Duke Myers wrestled last year on Friday night. So it was Belmont against Heritage Hills in the state finals in Indianapolis. So I believe that wrestler is higher up now. He's at 190, I think. So Goldsberry, right?
Yep, Jack Goldsberry.
Goldsberry's up to 190, so a tough match there for Cole Mendez, who's coming off his 6th place finish at the Al Smith. Of course, Heritage Hills will have to get past Mechaniqua first. We broadcast Mechaniqua's match against Adams Central, and the Jets actually wrestled them a second time here at Lafayette Jeff, and Adams Central beat them both times. The number 7 seed, they will feed into Delta in the semifinals. The winner of this match, number 7, Hamilton Heights. They're going to wrestle New Prairie in the first round. That will be a good match in the first round. Hamilton Heights had a great tournament last year in 2A. On the other half of the bracket, the other quarter of the bracket, I should say. The number 6 seed that will feed into Jay County. The number 6 seed is Oak Hill, the aforementioned Coach King, one of the last 2 teams voted into this year's tournament. And Oak Hill will take on Wawasee. Oak Hill versus Wawasee with the winner facing Jay County. Saw some good things from Wawasee across the board at the Al Smith. Very competitive. We saw Donovan Blair beat Cole Mendez again, a couple of lightweights, Caleb Salazar. I saw where you were doing football, Rex. I saw Wawasee wrestle Belmont very competitively in that opening dual meet of the year, and certainly a team that's going to have high hopes when it comes to Saturday. Now the last teams in then on our bracket, the number 5 seed, that will be Rensselaer Central. Rensselaer Central, they will wrestle Monrovia in the first round, and the winner of the Bombers versus the Bulldogs will take on Western. That's what that bracket looks like. Joe's got it made up real nice there. And so as we heard in the previous section, the top 4 seeds get a bye. They sit out. They'll have to sit up top, and fans will have to wait. If you are a fan of Belmont or Delta or Jay County or Western, you don't need to get there right at 9 if you don't want to. You'll have a little bit of time before.
Unless you want a seat.
Yeah, that's true. And the losers of those first-round matchups that you see, Heritage Hills versus Mechaniqua, Hamilton Heights versus New Prairie, Oak Hill versus Wawasee, Rensselaer Central versus Monrovia, the losers of those are going to get shipped over to the cafeteria to wrestle on 2 mats over there. So if you are a fan of one of the teams in the bottom 8 seeds, make sure that you know that you might be changing venues with a loss. And once you get sent to the cafeteria, you stay in the cafeteria.
Yeah, somebody was texting me. It's like, well, if you're not big enough to host it, you shouldn't make a wrestle out in the cafeteria. And I said, well, don't lose.
That's right. That's right. And I think sometimes people are really critical of the way schools host certain tournaments. But I think you have to realize there's a very short list of teams who are willing to host tournaments and who are able to roll out 6 mats at a time at a venue that can also hold 1,000+ people.
Yeah.
So watch what you wish for when it comes to criticizing some of those venues.
Watch what you wish for.
Because we've been to some venues that have been pretty poor when it comes to spectators. And, you got to look at each one individually. Martinsville was an incredible atmosphere, but was it packed over there in 1A.
If you're in a field house was not a good place to broadcast from.
No, it was not. I sat on the mat and broadcast from my phone, if you remember.
Yep.
It was Phil, me, and the track wrestling scoreboard in the horn.
You called in. I had you jacked into the board and was putting your phone in the broadcast into the board and sending it back.
Ah, the good old days.
The old leapfrog.
The good old days. So, any thoughts on that 2A bracket, Joe?
It's going to be some great wrestling. There's going to be some good matchups, and you never know with some of the lower seeds. Sometimes they match up a little bit better and make a run through the bracket and hit the semifinals or the finals. And so it's always fun to see the jockeying that can happen with 2A. There's teams that have a couple guys that are pretty solid on their JV or someone they can insert and bump up a couple guys and then make things very interesting. So that's always fun. That's one of the cool parts about 1 and 2A is just having those movable parts, as we call it, and some great matchups.
I think what I really like about this 2A bracket is the unfamiliarity of these first-round matchups. You look at the schools who are wrestling each other. Heritage Hills, Mechaniqua, I don't remember them wrestling anytime recently. Hamilton Heights and New Prairie, maybe at Team State the last couple of years. Oak Hill and Wawasee have been involved in Team State. But as far as regular season tournaments and postseasons, none of these schools are in the same semi-state or have not been in the same semi-state. Wawasee is in our semi-state now, but they don't have that traditional rivalry like you have with any team from your traditional semi-state. So that adds some extra to it. But then you look at the top 4 seeds, and they may be the most familiar teams in the top 4 because they've all wrestled each other for this crown, it seems like, the last couple of years. You've got 3 teams from the same regional, the top 3 seeds in 2A.
Like Joe said, it's going to be some good wrestling, and some of those teams that have fought their way into those bottom seeds. I mean, they're going to bring.
How do you feel about the change from the pools to the straight-up bracket? Do you miss the old pools, or do you like the bracket?
The bracket's way better, easier to follow, and trying to explain the pools and stuff to anyone outside of wrestling, it was pretty complicated. This is a lot better, and I think this is the way to go. And it's easier to see, nicer to put on a graphic, and people understand. Okay, I win here, I wrestle this team. It's a lot better, and I'm glad they made that change.
Well, and I think the pools came out of the desire, and this is a mentality change in high school wrestling, at least in Indiana the last 5 or 10 years. There used to be that mentality, I want to get as many matches as possible every single weekend, every time that I can. I want to maximize every point that I can. And I think a lot of coaches have moved away from that. And so that old mentality of, well, I'm not coming unless I'm guaranteed 4 matches or 5 matches, that's kind of gone to the wayside now. And schools are fine traveling 3, 4, 5 hours and only being guaranteed 3 matches.
Yeah, I think that definitely has changed with the prestige of the event getting even higher and higher. So the teams want to be there, and it's not about getting 1 or 2 more matches. It's about getting some great competition and being a part of a really, really good event.
Well, and I think, too, one thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years is as little attention as most people pay to 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th place, some of those matches are outstanding. And the best action that those teams get the whole day is those last 2 rounds. They're fairly even. A little round robin between the 9th through 12th seeds or the unseeded teams would make for a really good tournament in all of these classes. And so I think that's a positive for them too.
So we've come to the end of our segment, third period B. With that, let's send it back to the studio for a round of commercials. Back with the 1-minute overtime and a call from Clint Gard, who will be hosting the 1A team duels right after this here on WZBD. High School Wrestling Weekly. Once again, it's bracket reveal time. It's Rex Brewer along with Dane Filling and Joe Caprino. And on the phone with us, we have the coach of the Rochester Zebras, Coach Clint Gard. How you doing tonight, Coach?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing good. A lot of people listening to us tonight. We've had a lot of places that are hosting these come in and talk to us about different things they want to know. That's one of the segments. One of the things we're going to do in this segment is any details that you want to know to tell that the viewers and the people who are going to come to watch things at 1A would need to know, and it's your time now.
Sure. Well, I'm going to give you Friday, since we're hosting Girls Semi-State on Friday. I'm going to go ahead and give you that information as well. Friday, the doors will open to the public at 9:45 a.m. We are having school that day, so we probably won't open them up to the public much before that. So 9:45 a.m. Weigh-ins are at 10 a.m. And we should be wrestling at 11 a.m. We'll have a full concession stand available at 10:30. Parking, you will want to park between the high school and the middle school. It's our big parking lot. It'll be pretty hard to miss. Like I said, there'll be school that day, so my guess is we will have kids parking closer to the west side of that parking lot and leave a lot of the east side open. Spectators will want to enter through door E13. It's just fans are going to enter under the Rochester Archway. You'll see our brand new weight room. I shouldn't say brand new, but it's about 3 or 4 years old. But we just built a weight room. We have an archway leading onto the football field. It says Rochester, can't miss it. They're going to come through there, and it's door E13. Admission's $10 for girls semi-state. Preschool and under are admitted at no charge. And it will only, my AD just sent me a text, said they'll only be doing cash at the door. So Saturday, it'll be the same thing. And for girls semi-state, the setup's going to be fairly close to boys. For the team state, we're going to have 4 mats in our main gym. We'll have one whole side of our bleachers pulled out and about 4 or 5 rows of the other side. You'll be able to fit just about 1,000 people on the one side. So it might get a little comfy in there for those 4 mats, but I think it'll hold up well. For the girls, we'll also have 2 mats available in our auxiliary gym, which is about 30 steps away from our main gym, where they will be able to warm up, and we'll have TVs or a big screen in there where they can kind of view and look on track wrestling for in the hole and on deck assignments. But that gives the girls a place to make camp. Teams can make camp in there, have their coolers, whatever they need for their team, and also have 2 full mats to warm up on. Saturday, the setup will be almost exactly the same. We'll make a couple changes to the main gym with chairs for the teams. Doors open to the public at 8 a.m. on Saturday. Weigh-ins are at 8. And I'm sorry, weigh-ins are at 7:30. Pat Culp sent me that. Weigh-ins are at 7:30, and wrestling will start at 9. In the past, my experience with other schools is we've been able to start fairly close to both those times for the girls and the boys. So, again, full concessions will be available at 8:45. Parking is the same. It'll be between the high school and middle school. Door E13, same archway. Only difference is admission will be $15. Preschool and under are admitted at no charge. We'll have 4 mats in the main gym with chairs available for the teams in between mats. And then we'll also have 2 mats then in the auxiliary gym. And we have seating for I think it's about 350 people in the auxiliary gym for those 2 mats. I think it's 9, 10, 11, and 12 place, or 8 through 12. So there should be plenty of seating in there. Other than that, we're looking forward to hosting. So we'll be setting up Thursday, and we're looking forward to 2 big days at the school.
Coach, Dane Filling here. Just to cycle back to the girls' side of things,
Sure.
And to let everybody know, it's basically just like watching a boys' semi-state, correct? You're going to have 16 girls in each bracket.
Absolutely. Yep.
First 2 rounds are going to be elimination rounds, and then the last 4 girls left are going to wrestle 1st through 4th for seeding at team or at individual state.
Yep. It's from what I've been told by Pat Culp, that's exactly the way we're going to do it. So it'll be interesting. I think our semi-state, if you look at the 4 regionals that feed into our semi-state, and this is not a knock on anybody else, but if you look at the schools and the teams, I feel like we've got a really, really strong semi-state. Our regionals were fairly tough, I thought. Western did a great job of running their regional. It sounds like the other 3 schools did as well. I haven't really paid much attention to the other regionals and semi-states just because we're focused on this one. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a real fun day for our girls. And I like the change with adding the regional. I saw some comments earlier this week on Indiana Matt, and I think the changes to doing the regional are perfect. You got to let the sport grow, and I think this is a great way to do it. So we're excited to host, and we think it'll be a really fun and pretty intense day for the girls. I've already just thinking about our girls wrestling in that round to go, what we call her the blood round, is it's just as nerve-wracking for us as it is when we coach the boys. So we're excited.
Coach, before we let you go, tell us a little bit about some of your top girls and who has hopes of making it to Kokomo in another week.
Sure. We're really young this year. We've got a lot of freshmen with just first-year experience, but we feel like we've got a few girls that can make it on. We have some really good athletes for lack of experience. We're still at that point, I feel like, with girls wrestling. If you're athletic and, you don't have to know everything, but you're pretty good at a couple things. You can have some success. So, we think all of our girls can do well. Obviously, some of them are going to have a daunting task in front of them. But our two regional champs, we'll just talk about those two girls for now. But our two regional champs, 145 was Lane Pepler. Last year she didn't make it out of the regional at Jay County and didn't qualify for state. And has put in a ton of work. She's not missed anything that we've done this year and in the off season. And I think she's got two losses or 3 losses, but had a great regional, and we think that she's going to qualify for the state tournament, and we think she can place this year. And then we have our state runner-up, Grace Hirams. At 155, she was a regional champ this year, and she's starting to wrestle probably her best at the right time. So we think with those two girls leading the way, we've got a handful of a few other girls that we feel like can do really well. So, being on our home gym and being able to not have to travel that morning and worry as much about getting to other scales and making weight, knowing that they're going to be making weight, on our scales. And I feel like that gives our girls an advantage. So we're excited for all of them.
Well, Coach, we thank you for coming on the show tonight, and I'm certainly looking forward to spending a day and a half in your backyard here this coming week. And we want to thank you for all your cooperation and helping WZBD get set up for broadcast this weekend.
Sure, no problem. We think we got a good spot for you up at the top, so you'll be able to see all 4 mats in the main gym and have a clear view of all the action. And I think you'll have a pretty good spot to make the calls from, and we're looking forward to having you there.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep, thank you.
So with that, we are going to go back for another round of messages to Steve back in the studio. When we come back, we're going to reveal our last bracket, the 1A Team State.
Welcome back once again to the Hager Hershey's High School Wrestling Weekly. Rex Brewer along with Dane Filling and Joe Caprino, and now we've made it to our final bracket. A lot of local folks that are very interested, as there's some pretty good local teams will be in this 1A bracket, and some of these teams that we see on a regular basis we broadcast from. And I tell you what, Dane, the more that you and I cover this Adams Central team and watch them wrestle against Belmont, I think you and I had this conversation. If Keegan Bloom and Zach Worm wrestle that match, it's tied. And then you go into tiebreaker.
Very, very close. And Adams Central's off to a great start this season. They wrestled really, really well at Lafayette Jeff. I think they picked up a couple of knocks, as they say over in England. I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be healthy. Keegan Bloom did get on the mat and wrestle. And I don't think it's any surprise to people that Adams Central has earned the number 1 seed in 1A. They've been to every single team state that the Coaches Association has hosted since they started in this format. And they're going to be joined in the bye round by West Central, Rochester, and Tell City. a ton of dialogue. And I know, criticism's fine. It's part of the job. But if you really look at that West Central team, they have some real talent. And a lot of people, I think, just want to look at numbers or dual scores or those types of things. All three of those teams, West Central, Rochester, and Tell City, have carried forfeits throughout this year, different number of forfeits, some of them through last year. Tell City last year, Joe, I had that championship match down at Franklin. They beat Adams Central in the finals with 2 forfeits. And so, you don't want to discount a team automatically because they have forfeits, but what it does, if you're looking at this from a broadcaster's or a fan's perspective, it makes the matchups so much more compelling. Because if you think about it, if you have forfeits at 215 and 285, and those forfeits match up against a team like Adams Central, whose arguably 2 best wrestlers are at 215 and 285, and Keegan Bloom and Zach Worm. Those are 12 points that Adams Central thinks they're going to get against every team. But now if those 2 forfeits, those are your 2 weakest weight classes, that becomes a really good matchup for you. Or if you have a forfeit at 113 and 132, those forfeits have such a different impact based on, the matchups that you have and the ability to bump guys. And some of these teams that have forfeits up top, it's a lot different having a forfeit at 285 than it is having one at 106. If you have one at 285, you can bump up and bump that person out. If you have one at 106, like I've joked before, you can't bump Zach Worm down to 106 when the dual meet works that way. So some really compelling matchups. And, if the seeds hold and the semifinals work out to an Adams Central versus Tell City rematch from last year's Team State and a rematch of the 42-39 West Central win over Rochester, I think you've got coaches from Tell City and Rochester who are licking their chops thinking, yeah, let's have another shot at them. Tell City's going to think, we're the defending champs. We should be the number 1 seed. A lot of people have that opinion that if you're the defending champs, you should just automatically be handed the number 1 seed. I'm not so sure about that one. But I think those are your top 4 teams. And I think if you wrestled them in a round robin, it might be the most useful way to get a true champion. But this is the way they're going to roll. And it's not to say that one of these other seeded teams isn't going to come through and to break through. We saw it last year with Cowan and Bluffton. We thought that Cowan was going to advance and take on South Adams, I think it was, and Bluffton beat Cowan and knocked the Blackhawks into the 9 through 12 bracket. So you see that all the time. This year, 1A is going to be at Rochester, and we just heard from Coach Gard with all the details. So let's go ahead and reveal the way these are going to go. The pairing that's going to feed into Adams Central after the bye will be the 8 seed North Miami, and they will wrestle Cascade in the first round. Cascade got upset last year by Adams Central in the semifinals. And these were random, the last 4, Joe, into the seeded 4. But I kind of think, looking at it, that Cascade was right there for that 8 seed. And so I think this is kind of a true 8-9 traditional matchup between those 2 schools.
Yeah, that should be a good match. Cascade still, there's really good program that's risen just the past couple years. North Miami's had some really good results. I think they beat Wawasee
and Norwell and a couple other teams. Yeah, a really strong start to the season and a program also like Cascade that maybe if you've been around wrestling for 5 to 10 years, you think back to when you started, you didn't even know that those schools existed for the most part, and now here they are competing for a seed at 1A Team State.
Yeah, and they have a handful of guys ranked in the semi-state too, so they're pretty tough.
So we said that the number 2 seed is going to be West Central. They will await the winner of a rematch between the Cowan Blackhawks and the Bluffton Tigers. Cowan and Bluffton wrestled last year at Team State, so that's an interesting one. 2 teams from the Jay County Regional facing each other in the very first round. And I'm pulling up all of my head-to-heads here to remember who wrestled who. And then the number 3 seed is Rochester. The Rochester Zebras are going to await the winner of Prairie Heights and Faith Christian. Prairie Heights and Faith Christian. Prairie Heights taking the 6th seed over Cowan, who was the number 7. Prairie Heights with a head-to-head win over Bluffton. Prairie Heights and Cowan, I don't think have wrestled in the last couple of years, but Adams Central beat Prairie Heights 37-31 earlier in the year. That spoke well for Prairie Heights in that spot, but that was a spot that was debated pretty heavily amongst the members of the committee on who deserved the 6 and who deserved the 7 there. And Faith Christian, of course, somebody who is new to the tournament, but really passionate about being invited. We talked to Coach Kuhn in our show 2 weeks ago, and I talked to him earlier today, and he said that his team is really excited, and he's going to immediately be trying to figure out where Stroh is and where the suburbs of Stroh are and all of the details of the Prairie Heights team. And, of course, he'll be able to look at their results from the Al Smith and get a pretty good idea as to where they fall. Faith Christian, they come in unseeded into this matchup, but you look at when they wrestled West Central just a week or two ago in the individual tournament, and they only lost by a couple points in that individual stuff. Always interesting, Rex, to compare team scores from individual tournaments to seed a dual meet tournament.
It's oranges and kumquats. I mean, you can't use those two unless you have head-to-head matchups. You're talking about kids that wrestle each other.
It is very difficult. Now, there are some individual tournaments that are small enough where you can take our lineup and their lineup and say, well, let's look at how they did. Even if they didn't wrestle head-to-head, if my guy finished 6th and their guy won 1st, we can try to go 7-7 or 8-6.
This guy beat this guy, and this guy beat this guy.
But there's other individual tournaments that are involving 16 teams or 24 or 32, and you may only wrestle 2 guys from the other team. It's really difficult. And especially like in Al Smith, where Crown Point and Center Grove take all the points, and you're fighting over the 5th and 6th place points. You can't really say, well, we scored 89 and they scored 86, so we deserve the seed over them. It certainly speaks to a little bit level of being near each other, but it's awfully difficult to use that as something to use for seeding criteria. But sometimes it's all you've got, and then that takes a different form as well. The final teams, and then South Adams will be the number 5 seed. They've had an excellent start to the season. They have defeated Cowan. They have defeated Bluffton. They wrestled to within 6 points of Adams Central in their duel in the ACAC duels, and South Adams will take on Southmont in the very first round.
Quite a bracket for 1A.
It is. Top to bottom, probably the deepest of the 4 as far as potential for upsets. You've got some teams that we don't know much about as far as a statewide level. You talk about the teams in 4A and 3A, and you can recite their lineups, but you look at some of these teams at the bottom of 1A, and a lot of people don't know much about Faith Christian, about Cascade, about Southmont. Cascade's a team that's been going to Disney the last couple of years. They're very familiar with Adams Central, and I know Coach Curry listening right now, he might be thinking, man, I wonder how we match up against Cascade, because we've just wrestled them over the summer in July, and we just had to wrestle them last year at Franklin in the semifinals. North Miami, a team that you probably don't have many head-to-heads with because they come out of a different regional, even though they're in that Peru regional and in our semi-state. I'm not sure Adams Central knows much about North Miami, so that's an interesting one as well.
Yeah, well, you said Prairie Heights and Adams Central wrestled 37-31. That's 6 points separate in 1 and 6 seed. That tells you how just crazy this is going to be, and it's going to be a great matchup there.
In that same day, Bluffton only lost to Prairie Heights by either 3 or 6 points, and that's a Bluffton team that Adams Central beat 72-11. So when you're on that seating committee and you look at those commons, Adams Central 72, Bluffton 11, Adams Central 37, Prairie Heights 31, and then you look Prairie Heights 42, Bluffton 39. That speaks to the way the matchups go and the lineup that you have, and so much of what it's going to boil down to on Saturday is who shows up who makes weight, who's willing to go out there and wrestle injured or with a knock or however you want to say it, and put their toe on the line and try to win a state title for their school.
Well, Dane, we've ran through all 4 classes. We've revealed all the brackets. Joe did a great job of bringing those out to us, and then I also did see where he was releasing those full brackets out onto Facebook. So a lot of people have jumped on and commented on those. I think our numbers are really high for both people listening on the internet and listening on the airwaves, along with following along on Facebook and YouTube. And with that, let's send it back to the studio to Steve Rouse running the board for us. We'll be back with our final segment right after this on WZBD. Welcome back once again to the Hager-Hershey-Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly, where we have reached the ultimate tiebreaker section. And Dane, with this extended one, he had to put some extra periods into the old Hager-Hershey-Zelt Wrestling Weekly this week. As we've made it to the ultimate tiebreaker, we're going to talk about wrap up and a reminder of this schedule for next week. As I saw you went and looked at your little black book up there, and lots of sports on WZBD, and now we have the ability to bring multiple sports at the same time through 2 different medias. I've heard a lot of people comment about it. I still don't think there's enough people that know about it. I mean, I bring it up to some people and get out to, but you're doing a real good job of putting stuff on a website. So if people go to the website, there's links. It'll take you right to it. So
Well, we have one of the unsung members of the Z team with us, and we were just talking about getting that broadcast schedule out there on the website and available more on our social media. That's something that we're working on this week to better. So look for that on the sports side of the page, a spot to click on to find out what's coming here in the next couple of days. But we do have a wrestling match tomorrow. Homestead will be traveling to Adams Central. That'll be me and you, Rex, on that call. Then
and that is on YouTube.
That'll be on YouTube. Then on Thursday, we'll be live on 92.7 FM. The Judge and I are heading over to Huntington. We'll have South Adams at Huntington North. The Judge, one of our fans here, as part of the gallery tonight. And then on Friday,
Just to let you know, there was a lottery. We put everybody's
there was
name in a
limited
hat.
seating.
Limited seating, put it in the lottery, and the Judge just miraculously won it.
On Friday, we are going to have the girls wrestling semi-state live from Rochester. We are looking at trying to jump in for the ticket round matches in the afternoon on 92.7 FM, and then switching over in the final 2 rounds over to YouTube, because we have the head-to-head between Heritage and Adams Central girls, 2 teams that are really struggling and looking for a win. It's a perfect opportunity for one of those coaches to gain some success ahead of the ACAC tournament, which is coming up next week. WZBD has full coverage of that after the week of Team State. Then on Saturday, we will have Team State Wrestling. I'll be live from Rochester for 1A, and you'll be live from Jay County for 2A.
A lot of sports on the radio, and then we have to hurry back, and we will be at the Double Eagle Clubhouse Grill for the Hager-Hershey-Zelt High School Wrestling Weekly next Sunday night.
And let's hope that we are interviewing 2 state championship coaches in person from the Double Eagle next week.
And they didn't have to drive very far.
And not very far. Well, all 4 are invited, but I'm not sure we'll be able to get all 4 to come in person.
Well, Dane, we squeezed a lot of stuff into 2 hours. Got a couple of minutes here. And Joe, your final thoughts on the work you did to get all the brackets ready, and you did a great job revealing them. And I think the graphics really help explain to people how we pulled all this off.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun to see these brackets and get them out. And It's going to be some great wrestling. It's really cool what this has grown into. I don't know if this is like 10, 12 years. And it's about
Yeah, it's about the 12th year. Yeah.
So it's really grown and continues to grow and get better and better each year. And a lot of people that put in a lot of work behind the scenes, that's huge for them. The people that vote in, the committee that, makes rule changes on the fly after somebody at 10 o'clock at night makes an offhanded comment and in 24 hours later it becomes reality, that type of stuff. There's a lot of people that are doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's been really cool to see this just grow and continue, especially after the IHSA didn't want to do this anymore, and it's grown and it's bigger and better, and a lot of teams are experiencing a lot of success here, and that's what's awesome.
And Dane, it'd be interesting to see as you look through the information to see how many people were having reveal parties tonight, looking out for the brackets. I know that there was quite a few that had parties when they were looking to see if they got voted in. Now that they're voted in, they wanted to see where they fell into the lineup with the rest of them. And some of those number ones, number twos were pretty easy, but some of those other guys were fighting for those good draws to come in there and wrestle against teams that they may or may not know anything about.
But that's what it's all about, right? I know. You think back to that old Team State era, the IHSWCA. They just never put their full effort behind it. Do you remember, Joe, that you used to? How many times did you click refresh on IHSWCA.org at noon on a random Tuesday in January when they would just publish a web page that said, "Here's what semi-state will face which semi-state at Team State." You know what I mean? They never went out of their way to really promote that event. And one thing that I really appreciate about the Coaches Association is their willingness to let people who are passionate about it promote all the classes, all the schools. And, I guess my final word, speaking from the seating committee side of thing, is, if your team didn't get a seed tonight, it's not because we don't like you or we think you're terrible or any of those things. I can't wait to see what Bluffton does, what Faith Christian does. I am super excited about what Snyder can do at 3A. I would love to see Cathedral knock off a Brownsburg and have an epic upset in that 4A Team State. That's what it's all about. And I think sometimes there's a little too much vitriol about this team doesn't, this person doesn't like this team or that kind of thing. We're just trying to make it the best tournament that it can possibly be and create those matchups and then talk about the storylines over the next 4 or 5 days to get people excited about it. Mike and Joe are going to do a great job here over the next 5 days of talking about the matchups to look out for, what the head-to-heads are going to be, what you should look for. If you're at 1A and you're trying to scan through 4A, what are the head-to-head matchups in the first round that you should look at that are going to have big effects on the individual rankings? All of those things feed into this event and make it better every single year.
Well, let's put a cap on this here. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors that allow us to talk about wrestling on a radio, that bring us to the airwaves and to your computers on Sunday nights. I'd like to thank Joe for making his way down, running the graphics for us. I'd like to thank Steve Rouse for running the board, and thank my wife for letting us play in the basement for 2 hours and hang out down here. And with that, tune in for lots of wrestling, lots of sports here on WZBD later on this week. You've been listening to High School Wrestling Weekly on WZBD.